Charlotte stole the show, breaking royal protocol by rocking pink nail polish, looking shocked.
A hush swept through the royal hall as Princess Charlotte, with an elegance far beyond her years, lowered her head in a gesture that left everyone frozen. Even the monarch, known for an unshakable composure, was left utterly speechless. So, what could move the young princess to such a powerful and unexpected moment? Witnesses say what followed was nothing short of extraordinary, sparking whispers across the palace and headlines around the globe. But what truly happened after that silence? And why is everyone still talking about it? Let's find out. Tears and triumph. The soft notes of a lone trumpet drifted gently through the air, signaling the start of the ceremony. The melody was solemn, almost like a whisper from the past, setting the tone for a day of remembrance. The royal family stood still, their expressions etched with quiet reverence, as people began to take their seats among the carefully arranged garden rows. There was a hush in the air, not from instruction, but from a shared understanding that what was about to unfold was sacred. The first to speak was Colonel Matthews, a tall man with silver streaks in his hair and a voice that carried the weight of battles fought and brothers lost. His tone was steady, but his eyes betrayed the memories that still haunted him. He didn't speak of medals or glory. Instead, he spoke of friendship, loyalty, and the cost of promises made on the battlefield. Every word he uttered was like a silent salute to those who never came home. Following him, the tributes began, each one more heartfelt than the last. Mrs. Henderson took the stage, her hands trembling slightly as she unfolded a worn piece of paper. Her son had died in service, but to her, he would always be the little boy who once rescued a bird with a broken wing. He always wanted to fix what was hurt, she said, her voice cracking. Even when he grew up, that's what he did. He helped people. That's who he was. Her words painted a picture not of a soldier, but of a deeply compassionate human being. The crowd listened, moved by how courage had been rooted in kindness from the very start. Then came Priya Patel, a young woman with soft eyes and steady hands, barely out of her teenage years. She spoke of her best friend Mira, a medic who had once said that helping even one person through darkness could create a ripple of hope for many. She didn't just believe that, Priya said. She lived it every single day. Her voice, though calm, carried the fierce determination of someone who had known and loved a hero in her most human form. But it was Sarah Morrison's voice that brought the entire gathering to a standstill. Her presence was quiet, her grief heavy but composed. Standing there in a simple black dress, she spoke of her late husband not as a soldier, but as a father, a protector, and a man who had made a promise he never intended to break. He died keeping a promise, she said, her voice low but unwavering. A promise to protect children, to protect life itself. As she spoke, her 3 young children sat beside her. They were too small to fully grasp the depth of the ceremony, but something in their eyes showed they understood more than anyone had expected. Their stillness, their wide and knowing eyes, struck something deep in every heart present. And then, without warning, something extraordinary happened. In a quiet yet powerful moment, young Princess Charlotte gently bowed her head from the front rows, without prompting or fanfare. It wasn't rehearsed. It came from the heart. Her simple gesture of respect to fallen heroes deeply moved the crowd, even touching the monarch. Amid all the formal ceremonies, Charlotte's bow stood out as a raw, emotional tribute, pure, silent, and unforgettable. It symbolized innocence, honoring courage, and in that stillness a wave of shared grief swept through the garden. Tears flowed more freely, not from sadness alone, but from the beauty of unspoken unity and heartfelt remembrance. There was a kind of beauty in the sorrow, not the beauty of elegance or appearance, but the beauty of shared humanity, of hearts that felt deeply, of people of all ages, titles, and walks of life united in remembrance and gratitude. And so the ceremony continued. But it was no longer just a formal tribute. It had become something deeper, a living memory, etched in silence and sealed with a child's bowed head. It was a speechless moment. Some asked, was Princess Charlotte trying to act in a well-rehearsed script, or was she just naturally kind to the vulnerable? let's delve into another instance where Princess Charlotte was being kind. A royal debut to remember. On Christmas Day in 2019, a heartwarming moment unfolded that captured the attention of millions around the world. It was a crisp winter morning in Sandringham, the traditional location where the British royal family gathers to celebrate the festive season. Among the royals attending the annual Christmas Day church service at St. Mary Magdalene Church, all eyes were on the youngest members of the family, especially one little girl who, in her own quiet way, stole the show. That day marked the official public debut of Princess Charlotte, the daughter of Prince William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales. Though she had been seen in photographs many times before, this was her first time joining the rest of the royal family on their traditional post-service walkabout, an event where the royals greet members of the public gathered outside the church. While her older brother, Prince George, had already made his walkabout debut the previous year, this was Charlotte's first chance to step into the royal spotlight in such a direct and personal way. Just 4 years old at the time, Princess Charlotte may have been small in size, but she made a very big impression. Dressed in a charming forest green coat with a matching bow in her hair, she walked hand in hand with her mother, who looked on with a warm smile as Charlotte greeted the crowds. The little princess's confidence, grace, and warmth took everyone by surprise. Far from being shy or overwhelmed, Charlotte appeared poised and cheerful, waving at well-wishers and accepting small gifts from adoring fans. Then came the moment that truly melted hearts across the world. As the royal family made their way through the crowd, Charlotte noticed a woman in a wheelchair who had been waiting patiently to catch a glimpse of the royals. Without hesitation, the young princess stepped toward her. In a spontaneous and genuine display of affection, Charlotte leaned in and gave the woman a warm hug. Cameras nearby caught the moment, and the touching photograph quickly went viral. The simple act of kindness from a royal child, so unfiltered and innocent, reminded everyone that true warmth and connection know no rank or protocol. Many in the crowd, and even some royal watchers watching from home, were deeply moved. The gesture seemed to transcend royalty and duty. It was purely human. It was also a glimpse into Charlotte's personality, hinting at the compassion and strength of character she was already beginning to show at such a tender age. But that wasn't all. During the walkabout, Charlotte's charm continued to shine as she happily accepted several gifts from the crowd. Among the presents given to the young royal was one that stood out: a bright, inflatable, pink flamingo. The gift was handed to her by a smiling well-wisher, and Charlotte accepted it with delight and curiosity. The sight of a tiny princess in her smart coat, holding a large, cheerful flamingo balloon, sparked smiles everywhere. It was a moment of joy and innocence, a reminder that beneath the titles and tradition, she was still just a little girl, full of wonder and excitement. Royal commentators and media outlets across the globe were quick to praise Charlotte's behavior and the ease with which she engaged the public. Her ability to connect with people, even at such a young age, was noted as a promising sign of the future. Many compared her natural grace and warmth to her grandmother, Princess Diana, who was famously known for her kindness and ability to make people feel seen and special. The moment in Sandringham became more than just a highlight of the royal Christmas. It became a cherished memory for those who witnessed it and a defining moment in Princess Charlotte's early life. It showed that royalty isn't just about ceremonies and titles. It's about empathy, connection, and the ability to touch hearts, even in the smallest, most spontaneous of ways. For the British public and royal fans around the world, that Christmas Day was unforgettable. It wasn't just about the traditions, the grandeur, or even the presence of the royal family. It was about a small girl with a big heart, stepping into her role not with grandeur or fanfare, but with kindness, innocence, and a flamingo balloon in hand. A simple moment, yes, but one that said so much. In which event did Princess Charlotte render everyone speechless? Not sparing the monarch. Let's dig into the details of the event and how it started with a silent garden and a heavy heart. The day duty felt personal. Windsor Castle, majestic and timeless, stood unusually still under the grey English sky. a somber quiet wrapped around its ancient walls, as though the centuries-old stone itself understood that something sacred was about to unfold. Inside, Princess Catherine, known lovingly to the world as Princess Kate, stood alone before a tall mirror. Her reflection stared back with calm resolve, but deep in her eyes was a storm of emotions. Today wasn't just another royal engagement filled with public smiles and waving hands. It was a different kind of duty. Dressed in a simple, elegant black dress, Kate had chosen not to dazzle with jewelry or elaborate accessories. She wore only two pieces that spoke volumes: a pair of pearl earrings that once belonged to Princess Diana, her late mother-in-law, and her wedding ring, a symbol of love, loyalty, and legacy. She didn't see herself as a future queen in that mirror. Instead, she saw a woman stepping into the depths of collective grief, carrying not only her own emotions, but also the pain of countless others. The event she was heading to was a private memorial in honor of fallen soldiers. It wasn't a state ceremony filled with pomp and pageantry. No cameras flashed, no cheering crowds. This was personal, real, intimate. Gathered there would be the grieving families of men and women who had laid down their lives in service to the nation. Even the monarch himself, King Charles, was attending, a rare gesture that showed just how significant this moment was. For the past 3 weeks, Kate had immersed herself in the letters and personal notes sent by the families of the fallen. Each envelope she opened had a story that cut deep. These weren't just names listed on marble walls or medals in glass boxes. These were people, fathers who once sang lullabies, daughters who dreamed of flying, sons who played football in the yard. Every letter revealed a life once full of laughter and love, now ended far too soon, in the name of duty. As Kate rode silently to the memorial garden, heartfelt letters echoed in her mind. Outside, London bustled with laughter and routine, unaware of the sorrow she carried. The contrast between the city's lively rhythm and her quiet, grief-filled journey felt jarring. Life moving forward, while she prepared to confront deep loss. She knew that peace had not come easily. It had been bought, dearly, with the lives of brave souls who believed in something greater than themselves. And today wasn't just about remembering their sacrifice. It was about honoring the people left behind. The mothers who kept setting dinner for 4, even though only 3 now sat at the table. As the memorial garden came into view, Kate took a deep breath. This wasn't about royalty or rank. It was about respect, remembrance, and raw human connection. Her presence wasn't meant to command attention, but to quietly stand with those who'd lost everything. She wasn't stepping into a hall of power, but into a space of shared sorrow. And so, as the car slowed to a halt, Princess Kate prepared to step out, not as a duchess or a future queen, but as a daughter, a mother, and a woman offering her heart to others who mourned. The weight of grief was heavy, but so too was the grace with which she carried it. In that moment, Windsor Castle remained still, not out of formality, but out of reverence. For today, amid whispered prayers and silent tears, a nation remembered its fallen, not as distant heroes, but as cherished lives lost and dearly loved. While the fallen heroes were being honored, each family had a few things to say about their lost relative or friend. Let's unravel the stories behind the stone. Faces of the fallen and their families. The memorial garden was a place where silence spoke louder than words. It wasn't flashy or grand, but it held a quiet power, a space designed with dignity, sorrow, and love. Rows of white roses bloomed gently in the breeze, standing beside simple plaques. There were no long inscriptions, just the essentials: a name, an age, and a line that hinted at a life that had meant something, and a loss that had cost everything. As Kate entered the garden, she was given a list of the families she would be meeting. It wasn't just a schedule, it was a journey into heartbreak. There was Mrs. Henderson, who had lost her 19-year-old son, David, barely weeks after his military deployment. The Patels honored Mira, their brave medic daughter, lost saving civilians. The Morrisons, now 4, mourned Tom, a heroic father who died shielding school children from a deadly assault. one of endless nights, aching silence, and an absence that could never be filled. "Thank you for being here," she said, her voice no louder than a whisper but heavy with emotion. Each family bore their grief in their own way. The Patels brought a small bundle of Mira's handwritten letters from the field, paper treasures inked with love, worry, and the quiet bravery of a daughter who had always wanted to make a difference. The Morrison children had brought what they could, crayon drawings of their father. One stood out, a page filled with wobbly hearts and stars, and a sentence that broke the heart in its innocence. "My daddy is a hero." Kate moved slowly, intentionally, through the garden. She listened as voices trembled and cracked. She held their hands, looked into their eyes, and accepted the weight they carried. A father gone, a daughter buried too young, a son who never made it home. These were not simply names on a program or guests at a formal event. These were the living echoes of sacrifice. Kate didn't come to fix the pain. She came to honor it. Listening, reading, and admiring, she offered presence, not pity. This wasn't royal duty. It was sacred connection. In shared silence and stories, she stood beside grieving families quietly saying, "You are seen. You are remembered. You are not alone." It was humanity, not royalty, that she brought. The garden wasn't just filled with flowers and plaques. It was filled with stories too precious to be forgotten. It was filled with courage that had worn a uniform, with love that had crossed battlefields, and with children whose hearts had been broken too soon. Kate didn't speak much. She didn't need to. Her presence, her stillness, her tears, all spoke volumes. In that sacred space, where every rose seemed to bloom in someone's memory, Kate wasn't a duchess or a public figure. She was a fellow human being, touched by the enormity of their losses and the quiet strength with which they carried them. As the sun dipped lower and shadows stretched across the garden, she knew she would leave carrying something invisible, yet unforgettable: the stories, the faces, and the legacy of those who gave everything. As the fallen heroes were being celebrated, some people around some quarters were caught whispering. Who were those who whispered a promise? What promise did they make? Let's dive into the details. Wreaths, whispers, and the whisper of a promise. One after another, families emerged from the crowd, each clutching wreaths wrapped in love and sorrow. There were no microphones or lofty speeches, no applause or ceremony, just raw emotion, gently whispered prayers, soft sobs that caught in throats, and hands that trembled as they reached out to names etched in cold stone. Flowers, lovingly arranged, were laid with reverence, each one a silent conversation with the past. Mrs. Henderson moved slowly, her shoulders heavy with years of mourning. She dropped to her knees beside her son's name, the weight of that loss etched deeply into her every movement. A breath caught in her throat as she rested her hand on the plaque, her lips moving in a whisper only she and her son could hear. She bent down to place their tribute, a delicate wreath tied with ribbons of gold and blue, and lingered, her hand brushing against the name as though trying to memorize the feel of it. Her mother gently squeezed her shoulder, a silent gesture of strength passed from one grieving heart to another. Then came the Morrison family, a young woman with 3 children, small, unsure, clinging to her skirts. Together, they approached the name that changed their lives forever, Tom Morrison. The children took turns placing small parts of their wreath. One laid a single rose. Another added a paper heart they had drawn that morning. But it was little Tommy who broke the silence in a way no one expected. He wandered ahead, breaking from his mother's grip, and pressed his tiny fingers against the carved letters of his father's name. His touch was innocent but full of meaning, as though trying to bring life back into those cold lines. The quiet deepened, the air stilled, and for a moment, everyone around felt their hearts tighten, cracked open again by a child's silent plea for connection. Then it was Kate's turn. She held her wreath carefully, not adorned with crests or ribbons of royalty. There were no titles today, no grandeur, just a single symbol of quiet respect. Her steps were slow, deliberate. She stopped at each name, bowed her head, and lingered, allowing herself to feel the story behind every stone. She wasn't there as a duchess. She wasn't there as a public figure. She was simply a woman, feeling the pull of shared sorrow. A daughter, A wife, a mother. Her silence spoke volumes. When the official proceedings ended, most of the crowd began to drift away. But Kate stayed. She didn't retreat to comfort or cameras. She remained there, among the broken-hearted, kneeling, listening, holding hands. She didn't just witness the grief. She sat in it, shared it, made space for it. Then came a moment that no one could forget. Tommy, the smallest of the Morrison children, approached her. His big, curious eyes looked up, and his small voice pierced the still air. "Do you think my daddy can see me now?" The question was simple, but it carried a weight no adult could fully bear. Kate's eyes softened, and for a split second, her lips trembled. But she knelt to his level, brushing a strand of hair from his face. Her voice was barely a whisper, thick with emotion, but steady with care. "Yes," she said softly, "every time you're kind, every time you help your mummy, every time you laugh the way he used to. He sees you. You remind him of who he was. You carry him with you." Tommy smiled, just a little, and wiped his nose with the back of his hand. The heaviness in the air lifted, if only slightly, and somehow, amidst the sorrow, a flicker of hope burned. It was a moment beyond protocol or photographs, a moment where grief met grace, and in that silence, filled with aching hearts and memories too deep to name, humanity stood still and held each other. The grieving families did not hesitate to show their heartfelt appreciation to all who showed them love. How did the grieving family members relate with each other? Let's find out. A bond beyond blood, when grief created family. As the morning light bathed the gathering in a soft, golden hue, something truly remarkable began to unfold, something no one had expected. Families who had arrived in silence, bound only by sorrow and the weight of unimaginable loss, began to talk. At first it was small talk, a nod here, a polite smile there. But slowly, like the sun rising to chase away the fog, grief began to melt into gentle laughter, warm words, and human connection. Strangers became companions, finding comfort in shared experiences. Mrs. Henderson, whose son had fallen in service, leaned over to the Morrison family and, without hesitation, offered to babysit their young children any time they needed. The Patels, once quietly grieving in their own corner, spoke of planning a visit to the Morrisons soon. It was as if their collective pain had carved out a sacred space where empathy flowed freely, where no one needed to explain the depth of their ache. They understood each other without words. A bond had formed, not through blood or tradition, but through shared loss and mutual respect. Kate moved gently among the families, her presence quiet but deeply felt. She listened, not as royalty, but as someone who cared. She heard stories that would never grace the front pages of newspapers, yet carried the weight of entire lives. David Henderson, for instance, had once taught music to village children using nothing but handmade instruments crafted from scrap. His mother recounted how his laughter would echo down the lanes. Meera Patel had long dreamed of building a free clinic in her community. Her mother spoke of her tireless volunteering at the hospital every weekend, long before she ever wore a uniform. Tom Morrison had written letters from the field about becoming a teacher when he returned. He had planned to inspire young minds, believing that education was the most powerful weapon for peace. These weren't just soldiers, they were dreamers, givers, builders of futures that never had the chance to come true. Their lives, however short, had been purposeful. They had lived not just for their country, but for the betterment of humanity. And even in death, their dreams resonated, echoing in the tears, the stories, the moments of silence. She moved slowly through the crowd, shaking hands not out of duty, but out of genuine care. She listened, really listened, leaning in as if every whisper was a royal decree. There were no grand speeches, no political tones, just kind words, soft eyes, and the warmth of human connection. Kate watched from a distance, her heart filled with a mixture of sorrow and awe. And then she saw her daughter, young Princess Charlotte, quietly standing among the mourners. As the moment of silence was called, the little princess lowered her head once more, not as a figure of royalty, but as a child who understood reverence. And in that small, seemingly simple act, Kate felt a shift deep within her, a realization that sent chills through her spine. This wasn't just a ceremony of remembrance. It wasn't an ending. It was a beginning of a new legacy, one rooted in compassion and unity. A legacy that would not be written solely in history books or etched on memorial stones, but in the hearts of those left behind. It would live on in shared laughter over tea, in exchanged numbers scribbled on napkins, in promises to visit and babysit and carry each other's burdens. It was the beginning of memory, woven like golden thread into the very soul of the nation. A collective vow that these lives would not be forgotten because they had mattered. They had meant something. And somehow, all of it, the healing, the connection, the spark of hope, had been sealed not by a king or a queen, not by any speech or headline, but by a young girl's simple bow. In that moment, the future had been gently passed from one generation to the next, and it looked bright. So, what do you think about Princess Charlotte's stunning but silent correction approach? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.